Hello and welcome to this week's video, which is all about painting reflections and ripples in acrylic. As you can see, I've already drawn out the image. The paintbrushes I'm going to use today are a flat and possibly a bright, the difference between the two being the length. So this is the bright and this is the flat, and a smaller flat, a rigger for the branches, and also get my paintbrush out of the water, around for maybe some of the tree marks. So what I'm going to be doing today is focusing on how to build up your layers and how to put the final details. So although I've drawn it out, I'll just be painting this section here, showing you brushwork. My palette today is titanium white. This is a cadmium yellow hue, that's a Sennelier colour. I've got phthalo green, which is a system 3 colour. This is primary blue, which is a Sennelier colour, and I've got cerulean blue, which is Liquitex. This is a scarlet, no, that's a scarlet, sorry, and this is a cadmium red, which is a kind of a crimson red, so I've got a warm red and a cool red going on here. So now I'm going to just mix up the colours. I'm looking at all the colours I can see within this area, and I'm going to mix up quite large quantities because I'll be working with thick paint rather than washes. One of the colours I forgot to mention that I have on my palette is yellow ochre. And I've mixed a variety of different greens, a little bit of yellows. I've not mixed them completely because I like the fact that sometimes you get a little streak of a different colour in your mark making. I've added a little bit more red into the colour mix than I can see in the photograph because I thought it might be quite nice to contrast this dull orange red colour with the green to bring out the colours a little bit more. To begin, I'm going to start blocking in areas of colour. I'm going to start with the sky. Normally when I use acrylics, I'll start dark to light, but I think I'll put a base colour in of the sky and maybe a little bit up here as well, so you can see how they work together. When you're doing something like this, you want to work, and you've mixed your colours. If you're working the sky area, you probably want to work the sky area up here at the same time. And then what I'll be doing is layering in the colours in big shapes that I can see, and then I'll start to work details with the trees. I'm going to be working with very thick paint, and the paint will stay wetter for longer, and it means that I can work a little bit more wet in wet, so I can blend a little bit if I want to. I'm going to be using a variety of different brushwork. The sky is basically a mixture. I've used cerulean and a little bit of the primary blue and some white. This might be a bit dark, but I'm just going to put it in there. That's very dark actually. I'll add some white. Put it in behind the trees. This is just a suggestion so that you get the feel. And I'll be looking for cloud shapes. There aren't many in this photograph. This photograph, by the way, is the Bridgewater Canal at Appleton Thorn. So a little bit of white, more white because it goes lighter behind the trees. And for things like the trunks, I'll probably leave those, but for the branches, they will go over this sky colour. And there's a little bit of a hill there. So I'm just blocking this in, just so you get a feel, really. I won't be working any detail in the background here. And then you go off up here. The reason I put a yellow ochre ground, ground meaning background colour, is because it's nice when little bits of the yellow come through, and it complements the blue quite well. It's a bit complementary. So going on to the water, so it's quite light over here, and I'm just, because the ripples go side to side, I'm just moving my brush in the way the ripples are lined up, and You might get a few little bits of linear movement in this area, but mostly it's quite flat. So I can pull it a little bit. That gives a feeling of water as well. And then it gets paler as you come down here. And I can leave little bits of the yellow ochre colour showing. It goes very pale towards the edge of the water. I'm going to add a bit of water to this because it's drying really quickly. That does make it thinner there. So where all this the tree trunks and branches are, I'm just going to go over that area. But I'm going to let, as I say, let a little bit of this yellow ochre come through because I like it. So you're getting the feel of ripples already. I'm putting a little bit of darker blue than is actually there. There's kind of a bit more dark over here. So this can be quite rough because you'll be painting over it. And if you have thick paint, you can tend to get a bit of texture, which is good when you put the layers on top of it. So down here, there's not so very much in the way of ripples in this area. Just put a little bit of blue in there for interest. And I'm going to leave, because I've got my tree trunks up here, I've just got to make sure that the reflections are parallel to them. That's a mistake that people make very often, is they might have a tree here and be concentrating on this area and not thinking about the top area, and their tree might end up over here as a reflection. I'll put a little bit of this pale colour over here, which I will be going over with the green anyway. This is quite a complicated photograph, so I'm not going to be trying to get every single branch and every single shape. It's about capturing the feel and the expression of the water. It goes very pale over here. Oh, I've picked up a bit of green. That's nice. That just adds to the impression. And then there's a little bit of pale within this area here. So I've basically covered an awful lot of this. See a bit of pale down there. And a few little marks. So I'm moving my brush side to side and pulling it down like that. Pulling it down this way as well if I want to soften areas of ripples. I will show you a little bit more of that as I go. Right, so I'm going to start to work on the green areas, and this blue is still a little bit wet, so I might get a bit of blending going on. So to start off, I can see there's a reflection down here, and I'm working very, very lightly. And you can see small zigzags like that. There's a little bit of a darker green within there, so I can use the corner of my flat brush, and if I think it's too much of a defined zigzag going on, I can wash my brush, lightly dry it, and just slightly drag over it, and it softens it, but it does give the feel of water and a reflection in the water. So to carry on, going down here, so I get bigger ripples down here. So it's worthwhile just thinking about the main areas and rather than any details at this stage. And within here, there is a lighter green. I like to work with a bigger brush so I don't end up fiddling. I'll put a bit more yellow in that, I think. That's much lighter, that's good. A little bit of light in there. There's a darker area in here which I will put in a minute. So I'll take this green down to there, and I can see a little bit of it behind the tree trunks over here, and I'll just cover that area. I can see that there's a darker green. I'm going to put a little bit of red into this darker green because it's a little bit more brown, so going in there with my dark green. Because my paint's still wet, it's not showing very well, so I'm going to put on a thicker layer like that. Bit there. You don't have to paint exactly what you see as I said, just a little impression. There is a tree trunk. Let's see now, that goes down there, and I'm just tapping because I want it to look broken to give the idea of the movement of the water. So that's my start there. It gets very dark in the corner. I'm going to add a bit of red again to my dark green, and just within the bank here it goes quite dark. And I think there's a little bit of a darker tree shape here. So it's all about broken line and lost and loose edges. A bit darker in here as well. So I'm going to leave that side, I think, and work on the other side. So the other side's got the quite nice light greens in and the hints of red. So right in the back here, I can see a yellow. So I'm going to put that in. And that goes right the way across actually. And then there's a bit of a darker green. As I say, I'm still working quite large even to get the smaller detailed areas, because I don't want to get bogged down in detail. And then there is a bit of a darker area going down like that, reflection of these trees. There's a large tree in the middle. That's a little bit more brown than I've got it, so I'm taking a bit more red into that, and going across I'll take it down. I'm just, my brush, the hairs have split a little bit, so I can get a nice little bit of reflection going down there like that. This is quite dark actually, it should be lighter. Down there like that. And what you can do is you can dry off your brush and just go side to side within that, and you can lose it a little bit if you want to, if it's too solid. I think there's a little bit more of a light in there, but that's kind of like a highlight, so that really I would normally leave till the end. I think this is a little bit dark, so I'll adjust that while I'm here in this area. Could go quite light actually, it's almost white. So because these are cheaper paints, the white doesn't cover as well, so I might have to put a few layers on. So down here I can just do rough brush work, don't need to zigzag side to side, because it's quite although there's ripples, there's patches of colour rather than distinct little lines going side to side. And I'm going to put a little bit more pale colour going down here. That's it. Maybe I'll go into the white, because it is quite pale there, and just put a bit more on. Like that, and a little bit of pale into here. So working over this side now, I'm going to put on this green again, so I can see, I'm trying to make sure I'm in the right area. So it's a bit like constructing a jigsaw puzzle, a little bit more dark in that. So going like that, and yes, you've got ripples, so I'll just lightly go over my pale colour with my ripples. And yeah, there's another darker area over here. This is quite dark under the tree, or under the bush, sorry, so I'll just put that in. And that reflects into the water. Now, normally with reflections, the reflections in the water are more pale than the area above the water, which I'll put that in as a dark shade. Might be too dark, so I'll take a bit of this paler colour and go over that a little bit. I'll put that wall in, or the bank, sorry, rather than the wall, because that's a nice strong colour. And underneath that I'm going to just put in a line. just to separate the water from the bank. And I think that should be a little bit darker in there. So adjusting as I go, and that can be a bit darker above. And then you've got a tree that goes off that direction. That's right. So going on to what I can see around here, there's a lot of little marks going on. So I'm going to start with my dark, and I can see 3 shadows of colour, of dark colour, going there. And then I'm going to go into a bit of a paler green. I'm going to take some of this yellow and go into this area here. And all around here, it's the reflection of this light on the bank going on within here. Like that. And that colour also comes down here a bit. Like that. And then I can see a bit of a darker brown colour. I'll take a little bit of this, I think. Put that in. So this area is very complicated. I'm just throwing in colour and just zigzagging sideways until the area is filled in. And then I can lighten a little bit and darken a little bit to bring bits out. Like for instance, I could lighten where my bushes are, where the reflection of the light is. There, like that. So you can see it's a solid shape within the water. So going over to here, it goes a lot darker. Just need my tissue. It's kind of a bit of a muted brown. Now I mixed this colour because I could see a lot of it and I haven't used it yet. So I'm going to put this over here like that. I can see lots of little bits of light in this area here. So there's quite a block of this colour. Goes to about over here where there's a bush that comes over. So I'm just going to put this all over, and then I'm going to add bits of light into it and the darker areas as well. So that's a little bit lighter over here. And I've got the darker colour, which I will mix a little bit of red into this dark area here. And that is a line of dark. That's not quite dark enough. That shadow from overhanging branches going into the river. Maybe a bit of my pale colour again. I'm going to put a bit more white into that and slightly more yellow to warm it up a little bit. And then I'm going to do a little bit of zigzagging down here. And as I say, you can put your paint on and then use a dry brush to brush it sideways. There's a lot of foliage, so I'm just going to, with the corner of my brush, suggest a bit of that. Maybe a little bit darker in places. It's a bit down here as well. Got a little bit of a line going on here, so I'm going to put in some more dark colour just to break that line. So this area is looking quite complicated now, building up my layers. I'm just going to put the dark area here of the bushes as a contrast. So the bushes go over the water. Like that. And then I'll just use a little bit of paint to block in an area to suggest, needs to be a bit whiter, to suggest the bush. And then you get a lot of pale bits here. So this is just very quick, just to give you an impression of the bank. So the colour of the water is very different to the colour of the bushes, and that's due to the sunshine giving it that warmth. I think I could do with having a little bit of a paler colour within here, and it's still wet, so I can do a bit of wet and wet work, and maybe have a few little highlights within this area. That's a little bit straight, so I'll soften that line. And I think my darker areas I can put more paint on because they've disappeared a little bit, to bring them back on the water here. That's a little bit of depth in the shadows around here as well. So going on to the area where the trees are over here, I'm going to put in a little bit more foliage in the background, and I'm just tapping with the corner of my brush to give the impression of leaves. And that shape over there, here, has somewhat disappeared, that green, so I'm going to put that back in. Oh, I've caught a little bit of dark there, that's alright. And there's a kind of a yellow, reddish yellow colour going on around here, so I'll just put a little bit of that in. So I'm starting to work the details a bit more. That's a bit dark, but we'll leave it. I want to go for a much lighter orange. Area, which is around this bush. So within the water here I can see some little hints of dark colour, so I'm going to start putting those in. So I'm still not doing the details of the tree trunks. That's a bit of a wrong colour. Mix a bit of red into that dark, put it in. And I'm just tapping and just almost dry brushing. I don't have much paint on my brush because I want it to be a bit broken. Just a little bit there. And there's some around here. There's quite a bit of broken line here as well. So I'm not putting on much paint at all. And I'm going to, where's my tree? There's my tree. Sorry, I'm just checking that I'm in the right place. So for this tree, I'm just going to solidify it a little bit and make it a bit darker. So a bit of red into my dark green colour. And I'm going to start with the tree shape. So I'm going to put my flat away and I'm going to use my round. So I get a different kind of mark. So it wiggles a bit. Like that. And then over here there's a reflection of this other tree going on. And over here I'm going to leave that little branch because I'll use my smaller flat for that. So I'm just putting in the major shapes with this big round brush. So there's a tree trunk just here. Some of this paint is still wet, so I'm getting a little bit of blending going on. And just to contrast, I will take some of my really dark green And I'll put the tree trunk up here so you can see how it works. And that one there. And looking at it, I think that's all I need to do with my big brush. I'm going to put a little bit of a bush in there as well. Just trying to fill it a little bit. So I'm going to move on to my smaller flat. This is just a graduate one. This round I was using is a Pro Art. And also the flat I was using is a Pro Art as well. Which are my favourites, but graduates are fine. So, going on to my smaller tree trunks. They're a little bit darker than this green here. I can start to put in a little bit more detail, a bit more dark colour. So, I'm going to go into this tree a little bit more. And I've got, this is where you start to have to be very observant. I've got a wiggly branch going off there. Doesn't matter if you get it wrong, because it no one will be counting branches. As long as it looks ripply, you'll be fine. It goes over there. And that actually I've made a bit wide, so I'm going to take a bit of my blue and just thin that out a little bit. You can go over and over and over. And add a bit of water to this because it's a bit stiff. So just for my bigger branches, I've got this one that comes off here. And I can make quite a confident mark, just pressing harder and then lighter to get the width and the thinner areas. A little bit of foliage around here. And scumble that, which is just stabbing it on. A little bit down here. And I think I need to go a bit darker in here. But what I'll do is I'll finish the tree trunks and then I will step back and have a look at my tonal values. So for these trees, quite complicated. There's a wiggly one here. And that goes down to there. And another wiggle down here. One there. And it goes very dark actually over here. I think I need a little bit more of a yellow ochre there. My trees are disappearing. So I'm going to take this colour, a bit more yellow ochre and a bit of white into it. Slight hint of green in it. And I'm just going to go around here. I need a bit thicker. It's a bit weak there, so it's not covering. Just so that that tree trunk shows a bit. There's a little bit more warmth and heat around here than I've got. So carrying on with my tree trunk, hopefully it's light enough around here now so I can see the dark of the tree trunk. It comes over here. Right, a little bit of water dripped down my brush there, so that dark tree trunk is very wet. A little bit in here. And then I can have a look at everywhere else and see what needs doing with this thinner flat. It's a bit too fat to do the lines down at this end, although I've managed a couple. I'll just put in a little bit of that hill back there. It's quite bright on the hill over there. And then you've got the dark line of the bank. And then I'll just put in a few trees above. And this one maybe a bit darker. Put a bit of red in, a little bit warmer. These might be a little bit too dark, I think, because they come forward too much. So I can blot them, take a little bit of the paint off, and that makes them a bit more insubstantial. Anyway, I won't concentrate too much on the trees because I'm doing the river here. Looking at it now, I need to think of my tonal values, what needs darkening, what needs lightening, and also think about where I'm going to use my rigger. I'm going to put a little bit more mark making in here, just zigzagging. There's a dark shape in there. There's so many little bits involved in this. You could spend a long time just observing and putting them in. You don't necessarily need them all though. Wiggle there. And I think there's a branch or two that comes off here, so I'll put those in like that. And then you've got a few broken lines. I'm going to put a little bit of banking just to give it a feel of three-dimensional effect. There's a bit of a light hits the bank there, which is nice. It's too dark. So now I'm going to work a little bit on the rigger. I haven't actually used my bright. So the paint needs to be quite runny. Let's see how dark to go. I think probably this is as dark as I want to go. So then you can just wiggle all little details. Like that. You can use this to put in a few leaves and things like that. You can put in a few lines if you want to. And I also tend to use it for little small highlights. So I've got quite a lot of white on this. So I can go in down this end. And a bit of white here. Just makes it a little bit more shiny, the water with the reflected light. Down in here. Oh, actually, I caught up a bit of yellow. I'm going to put that in. I quite like the warmth of it. And I'm going to use it to put in a bit of this colour over here. That's too dark. So I'm going to take some yellow ochre and white. Mix it over here. A bit of yellow as well. And let's see how that goes. So I'm making downward marks rather than side to side. And a little bit lighter in here. And I can just drag through it. Like that. And within the water area here, there is kind of almost grey look to the shapes. I'm going to put in a few more. That's too dark. few more little lines. You can take them over if you want to break it up. You can just keep layering. Yeah, use my finger a little bit. Actually, that shouldn't be there, that yellow, but I do like that, so I'm going to keep it. And then if you want a bit more definition in some shapes and areas, you can go in with a little bit more detail. So there's a bit of a tree trunk here, and I'm going side to side again with my rigger. And I've got more of a defined shape coming on here. You can also scratch if you want to break up shapes. Do a bit of scratching on this area. And what happens is if you've got layers of paint, you get the underlays coming through, which makes it more interesting as well. So working on this area just a little bit more. I've got that pole. This is about here. And it's about there above, so just make sure I get one on top of the other. And I can put in a few little bits of leaves going behind here. I do think this is a little bit dark, so I'm going to add some white into this colour, a bit of yellow, warm it up a bit, and I can go in and put some lighter colour in there. I think that works a bit better. And a few little bits of reflected light. Which I can tap because they're a bit loud. And then I'm going to go in with my darker green. Again, I'm going to put more red into it. Just here. And go over the tree bits a bit dark. Going to go back to my small flat and just go a little bit darker in areas. And so that basically is how you would do reflections, building up your layers, and just good observation on shapes. But I wouldn't get too bogged down by detail, because you can end up spending hours trying to achieve something that you can achieve spontaneously with just a few marks. That's the bank there. And I'll just put in some pale green of the bank over there. So on this I would adjust my tonal values a little bit, lightening areas and darkening areas, and maybe working this a bit more, putting in a bit more orange. But there you have it, and I hope you found that useful, and have a go yourself. Bye.